The Akita Inu originated in the snowy and rural lands of Odate, Akita Prefecture, a wild and mountainous region of Japan. They were trained to hunt animals such as elk, wild boar, and Usuri brown bears. This breed in the 1600s was involved in dog fighting, which at the time was popular in Japan. From the 1500s into the 1800s, the Akita served as companions for samurai. In 1931, the Akita was officially declared a Japanese natural monument. The mayor of Odate City in Akita Prefecture organized the Akita Inu Hozonkai to preserve the original Akita as a Japanese natural treasure through careful breeding. In 1933, Haishiro Takaku, one of the early members of Nippo in Tokyo and later of the Nipponinu Kyokai in Osaka and Katsuchi, each published articles on a proposed Japanese dog standard, which included the Akita dog. Akita dogs revealed the most non-uniformity at that time, when compared to medium and small Japanese dogs, due to being outcrossed to the Tosa fighting dog, and other imported foreign dogs. Then in 1934, the first Japanese breed standard for the Akita Inu was listed, following the breed's declaration as a natural monument of Japan. The Akita breed was used during the Russo-Japanese War to track prisoners of war and lost sailors. During World War II, the Akita was considered a non-military breed and was crossed with German Shepherds in an attempt to save them from the wartime government order for all non-military dogs to be culled. Some were used as scouts and guards during the war. A native Japanese breed known as Matagi, hunting dog, was used along with the Hokkaido Inu breed to mix back into the remaining Akita dogs to restore the breed. There were many lines of Akita, but the most influential were the Dewa and Ikinoseki. Both lines contributed to the foundation stock for both Akita types, and many exported dogs were a combination of these lines. According to one Japanese judge, the greatest difference between Japanese and American-bred Akitas is that the latter still show much evidence of the Dewa strain. In the early 1900s, Dewa line Akitas were heavily favored and did well in show. Kongo Go, from the Harakudo kennel of Eikichi Hirezumi, is considered to be the most influential dog of that line. For a time, it was said, Kongo ke ni arazunba akatenu ni arazu, if not from the Kongo line, 'tis not an Akita dog. However, the Dewa line later went into a decline because Japanese breeders felt that the Akita did not give the impression of a Japanese dog, so began to breed towards an ideal type reminiscent of other Nihon Ken. The Dewa line was stereotyped as the German Shepherd type, while the Ikinoseki line was referred to as the Mastiff type. Thus, the Ikinoseki line rose in popularity. Goromaru Go was regarded as the most influential Akita of that line who, although didn't perform well in show, produced outstanding Akita dogs when bred to Taihei and Nikkei lines from southern Akita. Goromaru Go then became foundation to further the Japanese type. During the occupation years following the war, the breed began to thrive again through the efforts of Sawatashi and others. Mori Sawatashi and his efforts to breed the Akita is a major reason this breed exists today. For the first time, Akitas were bred for a standardized appearance. Akita fanciers in Japan began gathering and exhibiting the remaining Akitas and producing litters to restore the breed to sustainable numbers and to accentuate the ideal characteristics of the breed muddied by crosses to other breeds. It wasn't until the 1960s-70s where the foxier Japanese type started to diverge from the typical American type. The story of Hachiko, the most revered Akita of all time, helped push the Akita into the international dog world. Hachiko was born in 1923 and owned by Professor Hidezaburo Ueno of Tokyo. Professor Ueno lived near the Shibuya train station in a suburb of the city, and commuted to work every day on the train. Hachiko accompanied his master to and from the station each day. On May 25, 1925, when the dog was 18 months old, he waited for his master's arrival on the 4 o'clock train, but Professor Ueno had suffered a fatal brain hemorrhage at work. Hachiko continued to wait for his master's return. He traveled to and from the station each day for the next 9 years. He allowed the professor's relatives to care for him, but he never gave up the vigil at the station for his master. His vigil became world-renowned when, in 1934, shortly before his death, a bronze statue was erected at the Shibuya train station in his honor. This statue was melted down for munitions during the war, but a new one was commissioned after the war. Each year on April 8 since 1936, Hachiko's devotion has been honored with a solemn ceremony of remembrance at Tokyo's Shibuya Railroad Station. Eventually, Hachiko's legendary faithfulness became a national symbol of loyalty, particularly to the person and institution of the emperor. In 1967, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Akita Dog Preservation Society, the Akita Dog Museum was built to house information, documents, and photos. There is a tradition in Japan that when a child is born, they receive a statue of an Akita. This statue symbolizes health, happiness, and a long life. In 1937, Helen Keller traveled to Japan. She expressed a keen interest in the breed and was presented with the first two Akitas to enter the U.S. The first dog, presented to her by Mr. Ogasawara and named Kamikaze Go, died at 7 plus half a month of age from distemper, 1 month after her return to the States. A second Akita was arranged to be sent to Miss Keller, Kamikaze's litter brother, Kenzan Go. Keller nicknamed the dog Gogo and they were great companions from day one. Gogo even spent his first night at Keller's home sleeping at the foot of her bed. Kenzan Go died in the mid-1940s. The Japanese Akita and American Akita began to diverge in type during the post-World War II era due to America and Europe preserving the Akitas that fell out of favor with the Japanese, particularly the Dewa types and dogs with the signature black mask or pinto marking. American Akitas are typically considered mixed by Japanese breeders, and not true Akitas by the Japanese standard. However, their phenotype predates the Japanese Akita by a few decades, thus being closer to pre-war Akitas like Hachiko. Helen Keller is credited with bringing the Akita to America after being given 2 Akitas by the Japanese government in 1938. By 1939, a breed standard was established, and dog shows began to be held, but this development was interrupted by World War II. During this time, U.S. servicemen serving as part of the occupation force in Japan first came into contact with the Akita. The breed so impressed them that many service members chose to bring an Akita back home with them upon completion of their tour. Although both types derive from common ancestry, marked differences are seen between the two. American Akitas generally are heavier boned and larger, with a more bear-like head, whereas Japanese Akitas tend to be lighter and more finely featured with a fox-like head. Additionally, while American Akitas are acceptable in all colors, Japanese Akitas are only permitted to be red, white, or brindle. Additionally, American Akitas may be pinto and/or have black masks, unlike Japanese Akitas, where these are considered disqualifications and are not permitted in the breed standards. Recognized by the American Kennel Club in 1955, the Akita was placed in the miscellaneous class. The AKC did not approve the Akita standard until 1972, and it was moved to the working dog class. As such, the Akita is a rather new breed in the United States. Foundation stock in America continued to be imported from Japan until 1974, when the AKC cut off registration to any further Japanese imports until 1992, when it recognized the Japan Kennel Club standards. This decision set the stage for the divergence in type between the American Akita and Japanese Akita Inu that is present today. Elsewhere in the world, one American Akita was first introduced to the UK in 1937. He was a Canadian import, owned by a Mrs. Jensen. The descendants of Mrs. Jensen live on today breeding American Akitas. The most widely known of these is Mr. Joseph Felton, an award-winning Akita breeder, but the breed was not itself widely known until the early 1980s. The breed was introduced in Australia in 1982 with an American import and to New Zealand in 1986 with an import from the UK. The Akita is a historic, large dog breed originating from the mountains of northern Japan. Its name literally translates to autumn ricefield. The Akita is a powerful, independent, and dominant breed, commonly aloof with strangers, but affectionate and deeply loyal with its family. As a breed, Akitas are generally hardy. Historically, they were used as guard dogs, fighting dogs, and for the hunting of bears. Predecessors of the modern Akita were used for hunting bear, wild boar, and deer in Japan as late as 1957. They would be used to flush out the boar and keep it at bay until the hunter could come and kill it. Today, the breed is used primarily as a companion dog, but is currently also known to be used as therapy dogs, and compete in all dog competitions, including conformation showing, obedience trials, canine good citizen program, tracking trials, and agility competition, as well as weight pulling, hunting, and schutzhund personal protection dogs. The Akita is generally seen as territorial about its property, and can be reserved with strangers. It is sometimes described as feline in its actions. Not unusually, an Akita may clean its face after eating, preen its kennel mate, and be fastidious in the house. It is known to be intolerant of other dogs of the same sex, as stated in the AKC breed standard. Since it is a large, powerful dog, the Akita is not considered a breed for a first-time dog owner. The breed has been defined in some countries' breed-specific legislation as a dangerous dog. The Akita is a large, strong, independent, and dominant dog. A well-trained Akita should be accepting of non-threatening strangers, otherwise they treat all strangers in an aggressive manner. As a breed, they should be good with children. The breed is said to have an affinity for children. Not all Akitas necessarily have the same temperament. Akitas tend to be reactive towards other dogs, so caution must be used in situations when Akitas are likely to be around other dogs, especially unfamiliar ones. In particular, Akitas tend to be less tolerant of dogs of the same sex. For this reason, Akitas, unless highly socialized, are not generally well suited for off-leash dog parks. Sometimes spontaneous, it needs a confident, consistent handler, without which the dog will be very willful and may become very aggressive to other dogs and animals.